Welcome to Doc NYC. I'm the festival's director of programming, Basil Siokos, and this is the Q&A for the Truffle Hunters, appearing in Doc NYC's shortlist. Joining me for this conversation are the film's directors, Michael Dweck and Gregory Kershaw, and I want to thank them both for being part of Doc NYC. Welcome to the Q&A.
Thanks for having us. We're super excited to be a part of this.
So I'm going to jump in with some basic background questions and then get further into the film as we go along. Both this and your previous film, The Last Race, which was about Long Island stock car racing, explored small communities or subcultures. This also kind of does the same thing in a way. What draws you both to enter these kinds of off the beaten track worlds?
Well, when we stumbled upon this particular place after we actually were editing The Last Race in Copenhagen, we ended up, in this, just by happenstance, Gregory and I happened to end up in the same village, not knowing that we were there with our families. And we're always attracted to places where modern technology has not taken over the lives of a community and stripped away the soul of the community. And this place had that. I mean, this place didn't seem to be touched by modernity. It felt like we were back in Italy in the 1960s. And we also learned that there was a secret. And of course that piqued our curiosity and drove us to learn more.
And for context, Gregory, how small is this community that you're filming in, basically? Like, how many people? What's the sort of the area?
Well, the area that we were filming, it was sort of spread out throughout the Piedmont region, and the main sort of town, the center of the truffle trade, is Alba. But really where all the truffles come from are all these little tiny villages that are spread. Basically, it's a bunch of hilltops and it looks kind of like a fairy tale when you're moving through it. And each of the hilltops in the area has its own little town and its own little communities. And some of them are very small, less than 1,000 people. Some of them are a bit bigger. Some of them grow wine. Some of the best wine in the world grows in this region. And some of them have their own small little agricultural communities. But it's a part of Italy that really hasn't been discovered by tourists, and it still kind of it retains this feeling of being, as Mike was saying, being sort of lost in time. It feels kind of, when you're entering into any of these communities, it feels like, yeah, you're stepping back into a time before digital technology ruled our lives, and a time before smartphones decided everything that we do. And it's also, I guess another one of the attractions too was just this connection to nature that we found in all these communities. Mm-hmm. That the people that we were filming with, they spend their lives in nature. They're out truffle hunting, sometimes 8 hours, 12 hours in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter. But then they're also, a lot of them they're growing their own food. They have very close relationships with the people that do create the food that they don't grow. So it was just this really beautiful, but like it's a daily relationship with the natural world. It touches their lives in sort of every aspect of what they do. And it's just something that's so rare in the world right now. We're so removed from nature. We're so removed from the food that we eat, and they have all that.
And I wonder, given that it's a little bit off the beaten track, not quite as discovered by tourists, and the actual truffle hunting itself is so secretive, how hard was it for you to identify the actual hunters from? I mean, I did a little Googling, and I know there's like tourist friendly, let's go on a truffle hunt. Like, obviously that's not what these guys are doing. So how long did it take to kind of find the real deal and get them to open up to you, given how secretive they are?
Well, we thought it would be quite easy, but then we realized that we said, in 2 weeks we'll figure out this community. But it took us probably a year before we found probably a real truffle hunter, and they let us in, because when we were there in August, and we were asking like the owners of the trattoria, and we said, so where do you get these truffles from? And they would point up in the hills and they'd say, well, up there somewhere, but we don't know where they come from. And I said, well, how do you get them? And they said, well, see this little wooden box outside my shop? I put 50 years in that box at night. And in the morning, it's a miracle. Lo and behold, there's a white truffle in there. And then he showed us on his wall, written in pencil, from like 1941 till now, all the way down. It's every truffle he's purchased from this mystery person. And and he had no interest also in finding them. He said it was a secret world. They're only out at night. So then we had to go hunting, and that took a long time. We started with the priests in the town, and we asked the priest, "So you must know who the truffle hunters are." He goes, they would say, there's this man, he's crazy. You can't talk to him. He talks to nobody. He lives in this little walled-in house, and we think he has a gun. Everybody's afraid of him. And of course, we said, well, that's the person we have to meet, and that actually became Angelo. But then, and one thing led to another. The town talks, and I think, we met this one truffle hunter who made us pay our dues, which is going out all night long. Like Greg was saying, we go out at midnight, we come back at sunup, and we're going through mud. There's no lights. We have heavy equipment with us, and these guys who are in their 80s are moving really fast, and they're super fit. And it took him, I think, 5 days, and there'd been a drought for a long time, and he finally got a truffle that was like about this big, and we were waiting for him to go out to the road to sell it to our truffle dealer, John Franco, and he didn't. He took us to his little cabin, and he went outside, grabbed some wood and some eggs, and put it in his wood burning stove, cracked some eggs over this cast iron skillet, and put these eggs in a plate for us, and shaved the truffles on, and said, "This is for you. Welcome into my family." And I think that was sort of like a breakthrough moment where we were welcomed into that community. Word spread really quickly, and then one introduction led to another. But it took 3 years to make the film, and it probably is not a good year to find the real truffle hunters. There were a lot of guys that kind of dress in uniforms and bury truffles, but these aren't them.
And during those 3 years, how often were you there, and how long did you spend each time that you were filming?
Well, we would be there throughout truffle season, which starts around the end of September, and then it ends towards the end of January. And we would usually go for about 3 weeks, and then we'd return home. Michael lives in New York City. I live in Stockholm, Sweden. So we'd be home for about 2 weeks, and then we'd be back for 3 weeks. And we'd usually do that throughout truffle season. But then we'd also be checking in throughout the rest of the year. So we'd be in there, and we'd be back in the middle of winter. We'd be back in the summer to see what was happening with their lives over the course of the year. Because that was, when we started the film, we didn't have a story. There was no beginning, middle, and end. It was just this world that we were kind of fascinated with, and there was this mystery of the truffle, and everything about it was a secret. So we're like, okay, we have to capture this. We have to capture the feeling. But the story all came from just spending 3 years, spending time with them, and getting to know them, getting to be a part of become friends with them, and sort of be invited at least to observe their families, sharing meals with them. And then you start to realize, we started to realize, like with Carlo, who's 88, and his wife Maria wants him to stop truffle hunting. That was a conversation that kept happening over and over and over. And his, he wants to be outside all the time in the middle of the night when it's freezing cold. He's going down mountain cliffs, and it's really dangerous. So his wife is right. He should stop hunting, but he can. I mean, it's his passion. It's addicted to it. And I guess with all the people that we were filming with, like the time that we spent with them, it allowed us to discover these stories that I guess on the surface seem like small little stories, but for them it's everything. I mean, it's life and death for them. And so that's I guess the beauty of the time that we spent making the film.
And finding these truffle hunters, you also found their dogs, and I'm sure you get asked about the dogs all the time. But did you have a sense of really just the importance of the dogs to the truffle hunting business, I guess? And they become such a central part of the film, and you even let us kind of follow in the excitement of the dogs with some of the camera work. So can you talk a little bit just about the dogs and how you worked with them, and sort of realized their importance to the edit?
Well, every filmmaker knows that working with dogs is really easy. It's the best way to make a film if you're going to do it. So we thought it was important to show the dog's perspective, so you can come to understand how they react in the forest and kind of play the game, and how excited they are. So we had decided to let's put a small camera on a dog's head, and it took we thought it would be quite easy, but it turned out we experimented with making these well welded, aluminum trays with sliding gimbals on them, and then we tried, harnesses and things, and then, luckily we lived above in Italy. We lived above a shoe cobbler, and of course, you want to make a really sophisticated, high-tech rig, you go to a shoe cobbler, and that's what we did. So we went to the shoe cobbler. We said, okay, this is what we have to do. We drew the shape of the dog's head. The ears have to fit here. The camera has to be here. We have to see a piece of the nose. Go. And so it took about 2 months, and I think we were up to version 8.0 before we finally got it. And but we learned something interesting. What we thought was going to be just the perspective of the dog, but we also learned that there is a language between the truffle hunter, to the dog, and not a language in Italian. It's like doggy dialect, where they're giving them certain commands that's unique to that dog. And then we also realized that the truffle hunter is sharing very personal things with the dog. An example would be, we have to be really imagine this is a complete darkness. Huh? We have to be really careful because someone's laid poison meatballs, because they're killing dogs, because they don't like you, Berba, because you're getting too many truffles, or there's a neighbor here that doesn't like us. So that was happening. And then the more we filmed with like Aurelio and Berba, we go back to when he finally invited us into his house for lunch, we saw that there were like 4 places set, dishes for 3 of us. And then we see that Berba hops on the table first in front of her dish. She gets served first. We get served next. And there was a talk, he was talking to Berba about cooking a Christmas meal, what he had in mind, the carrots and celery and a rabbit. And it was a very important meal for them, and what Berba meant to his life. And more of these their one-way conversations started to be revealed through all the truffle hunters, of how personal the relationships were and intimate the relationships were with them, because a lot of them didn't have children anymore. They had moved away, and a lot of them, they had outlived their wives, and these characters became central to the film.
And maybe, both of you, but maybe I'll start with Gregory. Can you talk a little bit about how the two of you work together, and in terms of capturing the look of the film? It's got such a beautiful, there's such a beautiful composed element to it. And I guess how did you do those parts of the films, like just the interior shots with the hunters talking to their dogs, etc.?
Yeah, I guess the look of the film, it all started with this feeling of being in this place, and this feeling as we first discovered it. And what Drew was saying was this idea that it felt like a fairy tale. That's what it feels like. It visually, it looks like a fairy tale. And then we'd meet the people that were in the film, these incredible people who had these incredibly rich lives and these incredible homes and these incredible personalities. And we wanted to create we wanted the audience to feel what we felt when we were there. And so pretty quickly, we experimented with a few different ways of shooting the film, but pretty quickly we landed on the idea that like this, we wanted to bring the audience through like a fairy tale storybook, and we wanted each image, each frame of the film to feel that way. And the way that we achieved that was really working very, very slowly. Like usually on most days, we wouldn't shoot more than 1 shot. So it would be 1 shot a day, oftentimes no shots, because it was about finding the right moment to roll the camera. And to do that, it was waiting for sort of the right moment where we thought something interesting might happen, but also waiting for sort of the technical factors to line up, where having the right light, and also finding the right frame, a frame that not just a frame that was aesthetically pleasing, but a frame that kind of captured the feeling of what we were feeling and what was going on in that moment. So that's, oftentimes one of those things would be right, but the other one of them wouldn't. And we would wait. And that was the beauty of having a lot of time to film it. It allowed us to do those things. It was really, just kind of observing, listening to the world, and becoming friends with the people we were filming too. So, we had a rapport with them. We weren't, we tried to be more than just flies on the wall. We talked with them, we had meals with them, and they became our friends. And so the filming process was also about just bringing them into what we were doing and letting them share their world with us.
And one of the other similarities that I see with The Last Race is that both films in some ways deal with a theme of sort of the encroachment of change on these sort of not unspoiled, but these sort of out of time spaces, right? In the Truffle Hunters, you're dealing with aging hunters and people wanting them to get out of the business, et cetera. But can you talk a little bit about the other factors that they're facing in terms of this kind of industry being, threatened in some fashion?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny. One of our truffle hunters told us that when he was younger, he used to, plow the fields with his dad, and truffles would pop up like potatoes. That's how plentiful they were. And we've seen photographs that were taken in the 60s of just tables and tables of what looked like potatoes, but they were, big truffles just lined up, and they weren't considered back then. It was just a local delicacy. It didn't have a market to it. And as the world kind of opened up and people discovered the truffle, and Alba, which is really a small city, but there's no truffles, but it's become a branded play. They branded the white truffle, and there's become a demand. So there's demand from all over the world, from Dubai and Asia and the US and Russia. There's a big demand for these. And also there's been deforestation in that region. Grapevines look really beautiful when you see them in the valley, but grapevines bring other things like agricultural runoff, deforestation, and oak trees produce truffles. They're attached to a root of an oak tree, and oak trees are also good for firewood. So we have that issue too. They just deforest for firewood. So there are those pressures, and because of that, you have a truffle that used to cost $1, it now costs thousands of dollars. I mean, in the auction that you see, what you don't see in the auction, it's being simulcast in 3 countries. There's Dubai, Hong Kong, and Alba, and that's where you have all this audio of this bidding going on. And that truffle sold for $110,000 for something that's the size basically of a potato. So those are some of the pressures that they have, and we're trying to show those parallel worlds, that they're not. I mean, geographically, they're very close. They might be 5 miles from one another, but they really don't intersect. They just run in parallel. So you have Gianfranco, who's our truffle dealer. He's the only guy that is he goes between both worlds. And he's the truffle dealer. He's like a drug dealer almost. And that's how you see in the alleyways how these things are traded. And that's how they really are traded. There's a black market that we found that's at 3 o'clock in the morning, this small little town, where all these like 60 people come out to sell truffles, and then within a half an hour, they're all gone. And then you have Gianfranco goes around his Range Rover at night, and he's picking up truffles from our guys and bringing it to his store, where you see they're presented like diamonds in this case, and they're sold for thousands of dollars.
And I guess we're running out of time, but I have one last question, which again is kind of an obvious one, but can you share the responses of the subjects or the larger community if they've seen the film? What their thoughts were, and what that was like to show it to them.
Oh, so we were showing pieces of the film as we were making it throughout the filming process, but we haven't screened the final film for them yet. We premiered at Sundance, and we were planning on going right after. And of course, the world changed in ways that we couldn't have anticipated. So we've decided that we wanted to show it to them on the big screen. So we're actually going back for the Torino Film Festival, and we're doing a separate screening just for the people that we filmed with and their families, and we're going to show it to them on the big screen. So I guess that's a true test of the film if they like it, but it should be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to that.
And we don't think many of them have ever been in a movie theater before. I mean, they don't have TVs, they don't have phones, so we don't even think they've been in a movie theater. But we did arrange for a local, it's a 1930s movie theater in their town that's still operating to try to screen it from, but that's at this point up in the air.
Wow. Well, I would love to see that. I mean, that sounds like an amazing experience, hopefully, to be able to share with them. Awesome. We do have to wrap up, but I want to thank you so much, both of you, for taking part in this conversation, and again, for having the Truffle Hunters be part of Doc NYC. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor.
Thank you.